My name is Ashton Stith, and welcome to Il tuo bel nome eterno, which is my performance thesis of women composers. For a little bit of introduction, I am a senior music education major here at the UO, and I'm specializing or focusing on choir music. And the UO, like many schools, focuses heavily on Western classical music in its education program. And in the field of classical music, there exists this canon of often performed and highly valued music. This includes works that are recognizable even to non-musicians, like Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. This canon, however, is heavily populated by male Caucasian composers. One study, done by Dawn, of 111 orchestras of the top orchestras in the world in the 2021-22 performance season, found that 87.7% of the pieces performed were by white men, and almost 30% of the total music performed was written by the same 10 historical white male composers. Women made up only 7.7% of the composers whose music was performed, and of that 7.7, 5.5% were white women, which just goes to show how the music field excludes women, but especially women of color. So in this way, the canon creates a self-sustaining cycle in the classical performance realm, because music that is more well-known will be performed more often, and music that is performed more often is going to be more well-known. My goal with this thesis was to present a performance of choral music by women in order to uplift their music and show that it deserves the same place in the canon alongside the male composers that we venerate today. I also wanted to provide a high-quality recording of this performance for free online to help other music teachers who may want to program this music, as two of the pieces on this concert did not have any recordings freely available. This was nearly a year-long process where I chose repertoire, rehearsed the composers, and then I followed through with every component that goes into crafting a performance. And I learned a lot, and it turns out there's a lot more that goes into planning a performance than you would expect. Even as a music education major, there were things I had never even considered. So this was a really great experience in that I learned so much about what I'm going to be doing when I'm a music teacher myself. The repertoire for this concert consisted of Best Wishes by Marie Valverde. This is a text that she wrote herself and set to music. Marie Valverde is a living composer who's a trans woman and also an expert in transgender vocal pedagogy. Aura che mormorando al basco intorno is an Italian madrigal by Maddalena Castellana, who was very well respected in her day and as well known, if not more well known, than many of the male composers in her time. This is one of the pieces that had no recordings currently available, as the alto part book to this madrigal collection went missing during World War II and was only rediscovered last year by musicologist Larry Strauss. This music is now being performed for the first time in hundreds and hundreds of years, and my thesis consists of one of the first recordings available online. The Bronze Tautier is the first movement from a song cycle called From the Path of Beauty for string quartet and choir by Chen Yi. She was born and raised and educated in China, and Chinese folk music plays a huge part in her composition style, and she now lives and works in the United States. Song of Our Savior is a song very heavily influenced by the spiritual style of music, and it's by Julia Perry, who was a Black woman composer who lived in the 1900s. She was extremely well respected in her day. She won international competitions and studied with famous composers such as Nadia Boulanger, but she is little known today and her music is rarely performed. This is the other song that had no recording online available, and I actually found the score for this piece on a blog where someone had taken it upon themselves to compile all the music of hers that they could find, because her music is really difficult to find nowadays. The last two songs were performed as a set. The first is It Is Coming, an excerpt from the first movement of the Suffrage Cantata by living composer Julia Ramsey. The Suffrage Cantata is a 5-movement work for string quartet and choir that traces the suffrage movement in the United States from its conception to the ratification of the 19th Amendment. Finally, we performed Ofrandensvirga, which is a plain chant by 11th century nun Hildegard von Bingen. She was a very exceptional woman in her day and was very well respected, and she used her power to do things that many women during her time were not allowed to do, and even went against the orders of the church when she felt that they were unjust. So if you would like to view the finished product, you can search on YouTube Il tuo bel nome eterno. That is one of the last lines from the Madrigal by Maddalena Castellana, and it translates to "in your beautiful eternal name." And I thought this was a really fitting title for a concert that was meant to kind of bring to light the names of these women and their music, as it is so often lost to history. Finally, I have some acknowledgements. Dr. Brunken is the head of the music education department here at the UO, and we had weekly meetings for almost a year, planning and writing and proofreading and just everything that went into this concert, and she was a huge support as my primary thesis advisor. Brian McWhorter is my honors college advisor, who I can't thank enough. I would also like to thank the Center for Undergraduate Research and Engagement, as well as the Department of Music Education for providing funding that made this project possible. I would also like to thank Professor Eric Menzel, who's a professor of voice and an expert in historical performance practice, who helped us to create historically accurate performances of the early music on this program, so the madrigal and the chant by Hildegard von Bingen. I would also like to thank Michelle Suleiman, our collaborative pianist, who was also a huge moral support to me personally, as well as all of the musicians involved in this project, the singers who volunteered their time and energy to bring these women's music to life, and to the instrumentalists who also participated. I would also finally like to thank my friends Joe Mabry, Lauren Hendler, Elena Breedlove, and Adam Bruce for their undying support during this very, very difficult process. I would like to end with our performance of the excerpt from the Suffrage Cantata by Andrea Ramsey. This piece I felt spoke most strongly to the purpose and the intent behind this concert, which was that I wanted to show and express that it was never a lack of talent, it was never a lack of passion, it was never a lack of trying that kept and continues to keep women's music out of the performance canon, but rather a lack of access, and that lack of access is intentional, and we can do the work to change that if we so choose. So I think that this piece really gets to the heart of that sentiment lyrically the most. So please enjoy the Suffrage Cantata.
1830, of the 24 United States, half were slave states. Of the 2 million enslaved, half were women. For those women not enslaved, voting, speaking in public, preaching in church, and a formal education were not permitted. When a woman married, usually at a young age, her property became her husband's. Her body was not hers to control. She was expected to bear many children and raise them while tending to the labors of a 19th century household. few options. She could be a teacher, seamstress, housekeeper, or mill worker, but she would be paid 1/3 what men in the same positions were paid, yet expected to pay taxes in full. Even what she earned was not her own, as her husband could collect her wages from her employer at any time.
Legally, she was her husband's property. If he beat her, she had no recourse. If he abused her, she could not divorce him. If he wanted a divorce, he could take her children and leave her destitute.